Hey everyone, thanks for joining here with Frank. I want to introduce what we're going to be doing here on a kind of weekly, bi-weekly basis. Today, we're going to learn more about Frank, his background, kind of the origination story for Unrivaled, and then going forward, talk about, of course, news as it comes out, general company overview stuff, and any questions people have, please drop them below. We'll make sure we do some Q&A interactive type videos as well. So first things first, Frank, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How about yourself?
Yeah, good. No complaints. So here, let's dive into it. Usually like to start pretty early career stuff, first couple jobs, what you were doing before Unrivaled, and then we'll kind of go through the roadmap.
Sure. Happy to jump right in. And I don't know how far early career you want to go, but I started at Burger King in my teenage years. More substantively, I spent a couple years out of college doing employee/ownership plan deals. Went back to grad school, and that's really sort of when I started moving into early stage, high growth endeavors. For the most for the most part, it was in technology, semiconductors, software as a service, and of these, there were both venture-backed and public companies along the way. Had some really high-profile venture capital investors in the semiconductor company in particular, and was able to successfully sell those to larger firms after we developed the product. And then there's obviously a couple of public companies, NASDAQ and OTC, listed over the years.
Any that people would know? You want any names?
It depends. You'd have to have been in the field, right? So
Got it.
we did internet machines for the semiconductor and sold that off to IDT Semiconductor. We did IP Commerce, which was a payment-based software as a service, and we sold it off to a much larger credit card processor in the Midwest. So if you were in the space, you'd know them, but generally, I think it's the outcomes were very successful in the industry, but not necessarily Wall Street Journal first page stuff.
Wow. Well, now that's all you hear, semiconductors, tech stuff. But I know we're not talking too much tech, but wow. So, in the tech space for years, doing a bunch of different things, and then how do you find your way to cannabis?
It's interesting because I was a resident of Denver, Colorado for 14 years, and having as much public company experience as I had at the point, there was a lot of inbound interest to join the cannabis sector and take companies public, either on mostly in the Canadian Securities Exchange. And for years I was reticent to do it because I want to shout out to the early leaders in our industry, because for a long time they created this industry and risk being arrested, and I have to take my hat off to them for the gutsy moves that they made in those days. And frankly, I was just not ready to be arrested or risk being arrested. So I was reticent to do it for many years. And it wasn't until after the Jeff Sessions revoked the Cole memo, and then the federal government still didn't do anything back in 18 or late 17, that I decided that the horse was out of the barn. And the cannabis sector for me fits in really well with my career, in that I've been very focused on industries that have very large growth potential, that have very large addressable markets, and frankly ones where there's a certain level of chaos to that growth. And that certainly fits here. I mean, it is an unbelievable opportunity. The upside is extraordinarily substantial, and it takes a deft hand, if you will, to manage the regulatory environment, the capital markets in this sector more than most other sectors. So for me, it all fit, and when the light bulb clicked, I was all in.
So love it. So tell me then, give me a little bit more on like Unrivaled comes together. Give me so yeah, you see the rules, the regs, you see, okay, other people have made a few first steps, so I feel a lot safer. And you see, okay, there's an opportunity here. Why you're leading a company now, just curious the difference between leading or you joining another. Give me kind of that that kind of landscape.
Sure, and I'll take a step back, if
Yeah.
I may, because I entered the cannabis sector at another company prior to this one, and we took them public on the Canadian Securities Exchange back in 2018. Right into the capital crunch, which was not easy. Ended up merging it into a Canadian company, and consolidating the offices to Toronto. From there, I actually joined One Cannabis Group, and we successfully sold that to Item 9 Labs earlier this year. Item 9 Labs is an OTCQX listed company out of Phoenix. And then, that was concurrent with my stepping in and joining what was then known as TerraTech. So I joined as a board member and a CEO in December of 2020. TerraTech, which has the distinction of being the first US listed, US based plant touching company. So back in 2015, my predecessors bought a dispensary and were already public at the time, and took a big gamble and bought the dispensary and didn't disclose it to any of the regulators, and we moved on after successfully surmounting that challenge. So the long and short of it is I joined in December 2020, really with the mandate to update the organization, bring a higher level of governance and professionalization in the operations and the management, and then frankly to rebuild it, because during the capital crunch we had gone through some difficult times and shed some assets, including dispensaries in Vegas and in SoCal. So mandate was really twofold: to update and professionalize, and then rebuild. And as part of that rebuilding effort, the first step was the merger with Umbrella, and that closed on July 1st. And at that time, we took the opportunity to rebrand the company as Unrivaled Brands. And we've since then made two additional acquisitions, one of which is closed and one of which is pending in delivery and retail space.
Yeah, love it. And we'll talk about those, in a separate kind of video. Of course, we'll dive into deeper, kind of understanding of Unrivaled, what you guys are doing, some of the other things out there. But you're already segueing a little bit into kind of what your day to day, week to week looks like. See these questions all the time. And curious to, going from outside of cannabis to now cannabis, how does the role changed from a day to day, week to week as a kind of executive management, and now obviously the CEO?
It hasn't fundamentally changed, because as I mentioned earlier, my career has largely been in high growth, early stage companies, and we are still in that phase. I mean, we've grown enormously this year, but we still have a very considerable amount of growth before us. And so from fundamentally, it hasn't changed. Say I spend more time on regulatory matters, as we touched on earlier, because in a lot of industries it's a lot more streamlined. In cannabis, we have regulatory structure at municipality level, at maybe at county level, and at state level, notwithstanding navigating the federal level illegality. So I spend more time on regulatory matters and compliance. But fundamentally, it's building a company, and whether it's semiconductors or cannabis or auto parts, it's really all fundamentally the same. The process is a little bit different, and I spend more time on compliance, but it's really all just about managing growth.
Yeah. Wow, love it. Well, I want to invite anyone with questions, either about Frank or about Unrivaled, to drop them below. We'll make sure it gets in future videos. But Frank, last question for you. Anything else about you want in a video about you?
I'm feeling a little bit like the road warrior from the George Clooney film these days, with our operations up and down the West Coast, and going out and working with all of our team. So feeling a little bit like a road warrior these days, but again, that's all about managing the growth and making sure everyone's moving in the same direction on the same message. And I'm just extremely delighted to be part of this industry. I think it's really challenging and exciting, and that's what makes me tick. And again, I want to, thank the early pioneers, because it's on their shoulders that we're making this all happen.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, love it. Well, thanks so much for doing this first video. Awesome video. And we'll do a bunch coming forward. And again, please, anyone with questions, drop them below. We want this to be pretty interactive going forward. But Frank, thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate the time today.